Good Sunday morning and welcome to WGN-TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnick. We begin this morning with the ongoing war in the Middle East. Israel has continued escalating its attacks on Gaza in the 3 weeks since Hamas terrorists killed more than 1,400 people in Israel. Israel Defense Forces have carried out raids targeting Hamas infrastructure in recent days, calling it part of preparations for the next stage of combat. Leaders at the United Nations have warned a humanitarian crisis is starting to unfold as they struggle to get aid to civilians in Gaza. This happening as the U.S. carried out its own strikes in airstrikes in Syria, looking to stop attacks on American forces in the region. U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth, herself a veteran of the Iraq War, joins me this morning in our WGN studios. Senator, good to see you. Thanks for being with me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
As you know, the top priority right now in the Middle East, getting the remaining hostages out. The president has made it clear that we're supporting Israel's response, but we want to get humanitarian aid. Can you give us an update on what's happening?
Yes, so right now we are only able to get about 10 trucks of humanitarian aid in through the Rafah gate between Egypt and Gaza per day. I can tell you that the United States is actually moving one of those giant X-ray machines that an entire tractor trailer can drive through, because the Israelis are inspecting each vehicle manually, one at a time. If we can get that equipment there, which is on its way there, we'll be able to get as many as 60 trucks through a day, which is the maximum capacity of that gate. But we have to get this aid into the residents of Gaza, especially in the southern part of Gaza, where people are, hospitals are running out of fuel, they're running out of water, they're running out of food, they're running out of medicine. There's a major humanitarian crisis going on. And yes, the number one priority is also to get the Israeli hostages out of Gaza.
Well, 2 of those hostages are from Illinois, that are coming home.
Yes.
On their way home to Illinois this week. Curious, have you been in touch with their families? Tell me about that.
Yes, I've been in touch with their families. In fact, I've been in touch with the families of all of the hostages with Illinois connections who are being held. How many are there? About 5 of the 10 have some Illinois connection. I've been in almost daily contact personally with our hostage negotiator. Obviously, yesterday I was in the Situation Room with our National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, and I mentioned Hersh Goldberg-Polin, who lost his arm in that grenade attack and actually put a tourniquet on himself, and he's being held hostage as well, pushing really hard to get those folks out.
As you know, another top concern for the U.S. is keeping Iran out of this, keep it from escalating into a larger affair in the Middle East. In fact, President Biden said, if you're thinking of getting involved, don't. Yeah. So my question to you is, how do we stop this conflict from escalating?
Well, the problem is that we've got in Hamas an organization that has as its core tenet the destruction of Israel. I think that the participation of Saudi Arabia with trying to come into an agreement with Israel is a good move forward. I think that the nation of Qatar, the work that they're doing with negotiating to get the hostages out is helpful. I think the key thing is to get these other Middle Eastern nations to come in and participate in this process as well, but also to make sure that we cut off Iranian funds that are going to places like Hamas and groups like Hamas.
Well, as you know, the House finally has its speaker, and one of the things the Republicans in the House have said is, well, look, we're waiting for a bill from the Senate to deal with the funding issues that would be tied to Israel and Ukraine. It's expected that the Senate will send a bill that ties that funding together. What is your expectation, and what do you think is liable to happen in the House to a bill that ties those funding of the countries together?
Well, our goal is to put everything together in one bill. And in the Senate, we're looking at a bill that's going to have funding for Ukraine, funding for Israel, funding for a humanitarian. The funding in the bill that the Senate is looking at is an equal $10 billion for Israel, $10 billion for humanitarian aid to get into the region. Also money for the Indo-Pacific and for Taiwan, as well as money for the border. And in that is also $1.4 billion for interior cities like Chicago that are dealing with the migrant crisis. So there's a lot of money in this bill. We're going to send it over as a single package. What happens in the House? Nobody really knows this new speaker. I mean, I think there was a lot of Googling going on when they knew who the new speaker is. I suspect that they're probably going to try to slow this down or break things out of it, but I think the best way to move forward is a single package, get it out the door, and let's get aid into Gaza. Let's get aid to our Israeli allies and also to the Ukrainians who are still fighting for their nation.
One of the things, of course, we deal with disinformation in so many ways in this country, and more than ever before, even in this war between Israel and Hamas, it's been exposed sort of how prevalent information is in getting it right. Questions even about the death toll in Palestine. Look, you have an extensive military background. Talk a little bit about how delicate this kind of information is in war times like this.
Well, people think of Hamas and they think of Hamas as a single entity. It's not. It's all the, we don't even know how many hostages are still alive. And it's because there are all these little cells all over, and they've taken, each little group has taken some hostages and are using them as human shields in many cases. And so there's no, this is a society that's falling apart. Over 600,000 individuals have moved from Gaza City into the southern part of Gaza. And so it's really hard to track how many, but what's very clear is that there's a humanitarian crisis of civilians, of innocents, of babies dying in Gaza, and we have to get help into there, which is why I'm releasing a statement with several other senators calling for a pause to allow humanitarian aid to get in, especially fuel to get to the hospital so that we can stop the suffering.
And, as you know, there's a lot of challenges for Israel, too. Are they doing the same thing in terms of, people dying that happened to them? Very, very different situations. But President Biden also said, look, some of the death toll in Gaza is the price of waging a war. What do you say to people who are protesting out there?
What I'd say to people is that Hamas is using civilians as human shields. They're using wounded, captured hostages as human shields, that they do not care about, that Hamas does not care about the civilians in Gaza either, because if they were, they would not use them as human shields. They would not have tunnels underneath Gaza City where civilians are living above them. Israel has every right to defend herself. And we will stand strong with Israel, the only true democracy in the Middle East. But I will tell you that there is a lot of suffering, and we need to get help into Gaza, which is why I'm pushing really hard to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. There's even 1,000 Americans, dual citizen Palestinian Americans in Gaza that are waiting to get out, that we're trying to get out. And both Israel and Egypt have said, yeah, let's those people out, and Hamas is stopping them from leaving because, again, they're using people as human shields.
So as you know, having military in the right places as needed is important. You've been dealing with months, the Senate has been dealing with months with Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, who's put a hold on promotions in the military. He says that it is because the military must not fund abortions. He's put his focus there. What is the reality of it, and is there any way around what he's doing?
Well, the military doesn't fund abortions, number one. The policy that he's opposing is a policy where the military reimburses travel expenses for someone in the service who has to travel to a different location from where they are stationed if they need some health care. So if you need cancer treatment, or if you have a child who needs to go to Lurie, but you're stationed in Southern Illinois, or you're stationed in Alabama, but you need to go to Lurie Children's for your child to get treatment, the military will reimburse you for your travel expenses and give you paid time to go do that. The military recently, after the Dobbs decision, added reproductive health care to that, which covers abortions, but it also covers IVF, like I had IVF. And what he's trying to do is he's holding up the national security of this country in order to try to revoke that policy, to take away the reproductive support that the military is providing in order for people to get the care that they need. And it's, we don't have a Fifth Fleet commander right now. And yet we have 2 battleships off the coast in the Middle East. This is endangering our national security.
Well, he says the Senate can do it. It doesn't matter that he's got a hold, but you could do it one by one, but that's not practical.
If we would do it one by one, the amount of time it takes to do that, where there's over 300 waiting to be promoted right now, by the end of the year, if we did it one by one, according to the policy as it is written, right, we would have 600 waiting.
Right. As you know, the Chicago area is still waiting for its sitting U.S. attorney. There's been an appointment in that position of April Perry, but then a Republican senator from Ohio is blocking it. Why does he care about Illinois? He's also blocking Ohio, for that matter, J.D. Vance.
Yes. So his words, he says that he wants to grind the Justice Department to a halt. That's a direct quote. And so he's holding them up. Usually, in the Senate, you try to work with each other and say, well, what do you need? Do you need a vote on the floor on a bill? Are you proposing something? What is it? And he says, I have nothing. I want to grind the Justice Department to a halt.
Literally, that's the point.
Literally, that's a direct quote from him.
Let's talk about migrants issue while we have a little time.
Yes.
While we're here, the number of asylum-seeking migrants that have come to Chicago is increasing. The mayor and other politicians have made it clear they need help from Washington.
Yes.
A letter was sent by Pritzker to President Biden. Even the mayor's budget, in fact, is $50 million less than people expected. Should we expect money from Washington on that problem?
In this package, I made sure that included in it is $1.4 billion for interior cities like Chicago, New York, Denver, that are dealing with this crisis. It goes into a fund that can come then to the state for that. Also, there's money for more border security, over 1,000 more Border Patrol agents. Also, more folks to process those worker visas for the people who are TPS holders, because it's taking Homeland Security anywhere from 3 to 4 months to process those. Let's get that number under 30 days so those people can go get a job.
Democrats point to a lot of things that have been accomplished this year, the infrastructure bill and others, but as you know, polls still show the president underwater in terms of his own favorability. It does look like, that he versus Trump may very well be the election next year. How do you get Democrats to understand that things are better than they think it is? Because they're paying a lot for eggs and for gas.
Well, our economy is roaring. I think what we do is we talk to folks about where they are and try to meet the needs, and especially places like Chicago here with the migrant crisis, we try to meet that need, and we lay out, the challenges that we're facing right now, and that we're meeting those challenges. It's everything to do with infrastructure, everything to do with growing manufacturing in this country, which is growing jobs. And I'm pretty proud of the work that we've done so far when it comes to things like the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill.
All right, we're out of time, but I know that you've worked, you and Durbin, to bring home 2 new tech hubs, other things in a local level that you're doing. We'll check your website for that. Senator Tammy Duckworth, thank you so much for your time today. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Coming up next on WGN-TV Political Report, we're going to City Hall. Council members weigh their options as Mayor Johnson looks for approval on his first budget. Don't go anywhere.